Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Welcome back to Purchasing Truth. And today, Bill and I have been discussing what we're going to talk about today. And I think we got to deal with the elephant in the world right now. And that is this global health crisis. And, talk about truth and crisis communication, because we're seeing a lot of very poor communication out there in the world today regarding the virus. And, maybe I'll just leave it there and not get too detailed. Bill, let's talk about it.
That's the hardest part, Tom, is that there are things not to do that in communication to make things worse. Some of the things are obvious, but a lot of things are not as obvious. One of the greatest failures that's taking place is a thing called overexplaining. When you explain too much, the brain is trying to take the information that's being spoken and referencing, inside the listener's mind, what truth is this? It's not taking truth as face value. It's taking truth in reference to the person's experience. So, for example, if there is a story that comes off that there's this big storm gonna hit the shore, or a big hurricane, or in California we have the storms that come up from the south that are really big and wet everything down every couple of years or so, El Nino. And if a person doesn't have the storm as bad, or didn't have an experience as a bad thing for them, they'll say, oh, that wasn't that bad. I was inside. I was dry. Meanwhile, a half mile, 2 miles, 5 miles away from them, 10 miles away from them, there was this flood that took out 30 houses. But for them, in their mind, it wasn't that bad of a storm. It's just like a normal rainstorm. It's not that big. The hurricane wasn't all that bad. But when we explain things, or even over-explain things, the brain will numb itself and validate its own truth versus take what you're saying at face value. So it becomes either not scary because the person has rejected it, or very scary because the person in the past, lived in a city that got flooded, and as soon as any little rainstorm shows up and any sort of water stream shows up, they think that within the next 15 minutes, they will be washed away just like their favorite dog was. So, and I could make it worse from that, right? Even though, and these are things not to do. Not to do is to over-explain. And news media is getting stuck in explaining things instead of delivering message that starts with a fact or a value, and then works towards a positive truth in something that we can rely upon, that is both honest and also not explain it too much and not explain too much. All right. So that's the first thing not to do. Okay. And in crisis communication, one of the things that happens also, many politicians get stuck here, is they generalize the action. They generalize their behavior. They make it kind of broad and like hard to hold them accountable for something. Sort of like one of the things that they really struggle with politicians, because one of the things that politicians have to watch out for is that they've got to get votes from both sides. They've got to get, enough people believe them, and so they can't fall too hard on one side or too hard on another side in the past. Nowadays, certain politicians are making a lot of good work on just falling hard on one side, keep promoting that one side is true, and hope the other side can't build up enough steam and momentum against them, and just codify what they would like, and just know that the other side will get stuck into overgeneralization and overexplaining, which is what you saw in the debate, partly what you saw in certain politicians and candidates that did not gain any traction above 5%. They had fire for a minute, but not enough to create the next moment. And regrettably, they weren't able to move and engage. So let's not to go down too far down that rabbit hole. Let's stay down how can news media get better? How can communication during crisis get better? All right. There are some people that will float and communicate an oppressive rule. And when they communicate an oppressive rule, immediately that allows them to have exposure from the other side that says, look at that person. They're taking your choices away. They're overreacting, because they're putting that rule in place. What do you mean not go out to restaurants? Meanwhile, with some better communication and some more planning ahead of time, which is what government is for, safety and stability for the nation. That's what government's for, is to advocate fairness and legal responsibility for those at one level, and then a lot of freedom at the top. All right. An oppressive rule gets everybody's energy. Tom, I want to go out to a restaurant just so that I can feed the economy. But guess what? Can't do it now because of the protection and the safety that was not put in place ahead of time to get the testing done to see what the numbers were and where they were. Where? We don't know where they were. So now there's this blanketing thing that needs to take place in order to take swaths of the economy out of action, to do what we do here, which is talk remotely so that you and I are not in the same room together, which makes podcasting a really viable business at this point in time.
It for sure does.
It is, because you can reach your fan base now. You can reach your people because they don't have to be in the same room. Yes, live events are wonderful, but I know one person right now that canceled her live event of 900 people and had to throw $2 million under the bus because of it. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And there are many more examples of that. Yeah.
Conferences, NBA is losing, they had to lose millions of dollars. There was no choice because we didn't test early and it got out of hand. We did not take what was offered to us as a nation. Hey, the World Health Organization, hey, we have these test kits. Use them. No. We'll wait. We have time. We'll develop our own. Now you see.
Is that
You can see.
leadership? I'll tell you.
That really struggles because of the literally the amount of money that took place because of the loss, the slowdown. Oh my gosh, we are now. First, we're going to be treading water, and some of us are going to drown because we're going to tread water, and then we're going to be really tired and not know where to swim, and just kind of like barely, and then hopefully some of us are going to get that life ring, but not all of us are going to get a life ring, because the economy is slowed down, and it's not going to end in July or August. This is a going into a fall downturn that is really going to be just exhausting and tiresome that this is going to take place, and regrettably, it's something we need a lot of compassion and empathy for because of the impact of the belief. Is there ways to get us out of it sooner? Yeah, there's some ways. Is there the capability and leadership communication available? No, there's not. So very challenging.
It's really glaringly apparent that the administration, their communication, their messaging is being led from the top, right from the very top, and that it is lacking in many of these ways. These 5 things you say not to do are happening a lot, and that it seems like a great point for us to segue into number 4, which I think the current occupant is very prone to. Would you agree?
I agree. The number 4 is the overexaggeration of accomplishments. So I'm going to overexaggerate that when the virus came back to our shores with the military that was in the general region, and that military, those members were infected, we quarantined that and then sent a message that we're not taking people from that nation that are going to allow to travel here. We're not allowing those people to travel because they might be, bringing the virus with them. And every time he goes back to that, the over-exaggeration of that action, that accomplishment, and it's generalized and then over-exaggerated. It's like, no, you can't, because what happens is that truth is the casualty then. Trust is a casualty then. So, and then number 5 on our list, which is proposing short-term solutions. Oh, we'll only do it this little thing. Oh, we have plenty, testing kits. Everybody can get tested. That's where it's going to be. Now, I'm going to say something weird because it's literally not Trump's fault. Now, the reason why that's a weird sentence is that when somebody is brought up to language, marketing, promotion, sales, and branding, these 5 things are what you need to do when you're marketing, promoting, and branding something. You need to generalize what this product is going to do. You need to make a firm commitment about something it partially does and says, this thing is the best pizza ever. Better pizza, better ingredients, better pizza, better ingredients, better pizza. Papa John's, just to give them a shout out. No, it's not. It's not better ingredients, better pizza. They even took went to court over it with Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut said, no, they're not better ingredients and they're not better pizza. No, they're not. And the courts ruled in Papa John's favor that it's up to the buyer to decide what's better and not better. And the objective was for Papa John's not to put their better ingredients, better pizza next to Pizza Hut. So now they can't do that anymore. They can still say the sentence, better ingredients, better pizza, but they cannot go after someone else's brand. That comparing my pizza to your pizza. So the win was that Pizza Hut got them to stop doing that, comparing their pizza with their pizza.
Well,
and the loss is to the end consumer, where somebody gets to over-exaggerate their accomplishments and generalize their pizza making skills.
so that's amazing. I had forgotten that story. It definitely seems like they each, had a victory in some way, and then they each got a pie in the face in some ways, really.
Correct. That's right.
Because Papa John's said, well, yeah, you can say that about it, but you can't do this. And Pizza Hut got a victory in saying, well, they can't put us side by side with them and smear us on this thing. But at the same time, they didn't get what they wanted either. They didn't get them a ruling that said, hey, your ingredients are not better.
Right. The generalization that the court allows with language allows a lot of variations for things to be interpreted. And so this is very, very problematic, because there's certain parts of the country where there's certain rules in place that the nation doesn't swoop down and do anything about it. And I would call some of these rules and oppressive rules, they're atrocities. They're oppressive to the people that live in that state, in that area. Yeah,
I would agree.
So overexaggerating accomplishments. So these 5 things: overexplaining. We don't want to over-explain too much. Just give the fact and just put a piece of information by it so people can start down the path. So the acronym that I came up with is to restore trust, and we want to convey trust. And the first letter in trust is T, truth in information. Just give the facts, bring bad news early. Just give the fact. Here's the fact. Just tell me the number. Measure it. And then be honest if you haven't measured it. If you didn't make enough tests, you made a mistake, fall on the sword early so you can keep your integrity as you keep going. So number 1, T, truth and information. Number 2, R, reassurance. Give reassurance that's based on the accurate information, not reassurance that's generalized. This will be over very soon. We're really ahead of this. Look, we've done a wonderful job. Here's a sheet of paper. See, this sheet of paper says I'm doing a wonderful job. That's like, somebody at Home Shopping Network holding up a testimonial and saying, yeah, John in Spokane, Washington says this is okay, and this is the difference he made for him. Again, generalizing, pulling one piece of testimonial that's written well to sell something, not to run a stable government where you're protecting people and lives, as well as protecting the economy. If you think about it, these are elements that did not make did not make the economy tank during the 3 pandemics that Barack Obama had to go through. The economy did not tank on those three things, but ours is going to tank.
Yeah, ours is taking a big hit already, and we're still not even midway through this thing.
The messaging, the communication messaging is a roller coaster.
I would say it's a train wreck to label it. But
yes,
and I have a question to you about the underlying needs after we get through the rest of your TR.U.S.T acronym. So let's get through that. Yeah.
Now the next one, U, is something that I had to think about a little bit. Is how do we use empathy for the top 5 things that took place? They're doing their best to explain something that's complex, where they really just need to tell the truth. They're giving us a piece of information that has a partial truth to it, but really that's a generalized action that the person has done. Empathy. Gosh, I see that they're looking to do a rule, but if they apply that rule there, it's going to affect and cause a cascade of trust not taking place. So using empathy is one of those things where when we talk about what the need is and the feeling that goes with it, we can actually calm the feeling down and calm down the reaction. But you got to watch the next thing that comes out of your mouth. So Trump comes out and says things are, not so bad, and he starts the State of the Union address, and he uses the 5 things in the State of the Union address. I'm going like, I don't have any hair to pull out right now. It's not very wise to have a State of the Union address that does overexplaining, generalization, an oppressive rule, an overexaggeration of accomplishment, and a short-term solution. Oh my gosh, how could you not do all 5 in an address? And the next day, the stock market just right down. Because there's no trust left at the end of it. There's none.
Well, yeah, there's no belief among the people that he has anything under control.
Nope.
Really. That's the trust that's missing. Okay, so what's after use empathy?
Scary honesty.
Mm.
Scary honesty is you got to talk about your mistakes openly. And it doesn't mean you have to do shame or guilt around it. You don't have to do blame around it. You just got to do honesty. So the current messaging doctor, the one that's the infectious control doctor, is doing scary honesty. And the marketing person, the branding person, is doing counter messages to the scary honesty. So what happens is that the person in charge of the infectious, the communication with this crisis is gaining more respect, more recognition, more trust, more acknowledgement. We're not believing the other person, and it's one of President Trump's successful formula by not allowing anybody to be above him in expertise, to always hire people that are below his skill set level or at a higher skill set level, but do his deeds or clean up his mess for him. And they have done that. They've brought in messaging people that'll lie in front of the Senate and not do a trial and to talk themselves out of it because there's not the votes.
Well, and actually it's very similar to the person that Trump put in place of the Justice Department, Bill Barr.
Right.
It's very
Right.
much what you were describing is very much the same. I mean, Bill Barr,
Right.
I'm sure, is much smarter than the president when it comes to legal
That's right.
matters in general,
Yes. Yes.
but he is clearly at the direction of, if not under the control of the president. He won't let him, he being the president, won't let Bill Barr do certain things. He's got to do it Trump's way, and we've demonstrated that he's demonstrated that he's willing to do that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, he is. And notice that Bill Barr, since you brought him up, also uses the 5 things not to do in a crisis.
He does. I
And
recognize
what
that.
he does is he puts this in place because he knows the short attention span of the American media cycle. You know, that we just run out of steam, and so he can use those 5 things in general non-crisis experiences like the Muller Report, and redact things that are not supposed to be redacted just to protect his client. That's what we'll discover in time.
And put out an opinion that, you know, your own opinion, which doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any weight or any bearing, but you put out an opinion that reveals some things about the report, but then, you know, you minimize it, you proportionalize it, saying, yeah, there's really no, here's what's there, there's really no there, and, you know, you take a lot of wind out of the sails of the whole effort
of truth.
Yeah.
Truth doesn't have any place to sail to. And that's the thing. That's and we are the ship. We are the ship in the storm with no leadership rudder, with limited leadership rudder, and limited, ability to go someplace, to find safe ground, to get out of the storm. The storm's going to last longer than it needs to. So the last one in our acronym after scary honesty is timeliness with bad news. It's called bring bad news early. Timeliness. You've got to be timely about bad news. Yeah, initially you hear bad news and you go like, is this the best moment for this bad news? And usually the answer is sooner than later. It is not, it is not hold this back and see if we can make this wait, which is really what they do in recalls. They don't recall things right away. And the ones that recall things right away actually get a lot of respect and recognition and acknowledgement when they do. And they take the step, and their brand gets to be known as, wait a minute, they do something over there. So, for example, when there was somebody that was poisoning medicines on the shelf for Bayer pulled, Johnson & Johnson pulled all of their stuff off the shelf. All of their stuff. Rebottled it, recapped it with a protective seal. They pulled it all off, and they did it instantly. They didn't.
The Tylenol cyanide thing.
Tylenol cyanide. That would be years ago, right? Now I'm dating myself even there.
Sorry, I remember it too.
There you go. So they got long-term brand recognition by bringing bad news early and acting on that bad news. Hey, wait a minute. When they pulled all the things off the shelf first, and then did not put the seal cap on it. And then when it happened again, because it did happen twice, when it happened again, they pulled it off again, and they said, well, what's the way to give the consumer certainty that we have done our part to meet the need for safety, well, we got to change the bottling industry and put this protective sealant on it, which is now the industry standard of all bottles that we open up in the United States. So
Oh my gosh, yeah, not just medicines, a lot of foods is
foods have the
similar.
sealant,
Yeah.
have that sealant on it. We adjusted just fine.
Oh, do you remember when you used to buy a jar of peanut butter? You would just unscrew the lid. I mean, anybody in the
Be there.
grocery store could have unscrewed the lid and seen the peanut butter. And people today who grow up think, you mean the jar could just have been opened? The very idea that it could have been opened and tampered with is so otherworldly to people today.
This otherworldly.
It's like, you mean you open up the lid and there isn't that one-time seal? You don't know? No, we didn't have that.
We did
Right.
not have that.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of safety and protection and a way to get trust. How do you get trust? You do scary honesty. How do you do scary honesty? You bring bad news early. What do you do when somebody gives you some BS? You give them empathy. You give them empathy for the BS that they just gave you with the generalization, the rule, the overexaggeration. Yeah, the need for safety, the belief about safety is to shut the borders. The scary honesty with that thing is it's an overreaction. It is a oppressive rule that too late, too little, too little, too late. And, I see you're doing your best over there, and you have the thought that this rule is going to make a big difference. But really, it's just a talking point in your list of things to reinforce and to pump up the exaggeration that you're a person of accomplishment. This is not accomplishing anything. It's not helping us now. Yeah. I make the decree that within the next 30 days, there will be enough testing kits for every American to take one. I commit to 30 days of that, and then communicate bad news as it goes. How are you going to make 300 million test kits? How are you going to do that? 36 million test kits for all the people in the United States. Well, within the next 60 days, we will have 300 million test kits for everyone to get tested. Look at how I'm generalizing, but I'm making a commitment. But notice that there's no empathy and no reassurance, and people go, BS. That's not honest. Tell us what, honestly, within the next 30 days we will have how many test kits.
It's not believable because they're, it's seen as, wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking.
Rather than putting some kind of context on it that gives people some measure of, and this is going to sound weird because, you would think that certainty either is or isn't, but I think you give them some measure of certainty that within this amount of time we'll have it.
Right.
Right. I think it's very good. And it's very interesting, Billy, what you talked about before in terms of, bringing out the bad news early is very much what we tell kids that, my 6-year-old that has a Band-Aid on that needs to come off. This Band-Aid is now gotten so dirty in the sandbox, it's making the wound worse than it did when it was protecting it. And we need to rip the Band-Aid off. And that's going to have some short-term pain. But it's going to be better in the long run. And the interesting thing, there's another, I think you'll like this analogy. One of my, I still remember him from, it's 25 years ago at least, but my CPA in my business way back when I lived in the Midwest, he, when it came to certain things like taxes and rules, and he was a very good accountant, knew what he was doing, but he said, look, I'm not here to be your conscience. And when there was a potential something of bad news or bad outcome that might happen, there was another strategy he had, an expression he had, and I've used it ever since. It's called T-11. I was like, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, did you ever see the space shuttle? Of course, this is in the 80s and 90s at the time. Do you ever see the, at the space shuttle, whenever there's a countdown hold, it happens at T-11 seconds. Anything before that, not after that. Because once you get to T-10, you're launching. You're trying. Whether you succeed or fail, you're gonna pull that trigger, push that button. So whenever there was a lot of times with the space shuttle, there was a government contractor who made a satellite or made, some other device going up or is responsible for some system. And all these contractors knew that if they were the one that holds up the countdown, they're the ones that get a bill for like $1 million+ a day holding up the shuttle.
Wow.
So all these contractors are waiting till T-11 before they admit, hey, we got an issue. We need to stop this launch. They're waiting to see who flinches, hoping that the other contractor flinches first, ends up paying the bill, and then they're not the ones that have to pay the bill. So I very much see what the communication coming out from the White House has been is and I think this is a poor strategy, even with the space shuttle and all that. I mean, because wouldn't everybody like to know there's a problem and start dealing with it sooner rather than later? Because it cascades into more problems. But they're all hoping either for
somebody else is going to do it.
Something else is going to happen. Some other circumstance is going to happen. They're hoping Trump's been hoping this problem was going to go away on its own and not get as bad. And as I've learned in business early in my career, and I admittedly, similar to the president, my experience in what I'm saying now comes from business, but hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
And you can get lucky once or twice, maybe.
Yeah.
But you cannot make success through hope in business. And I also think in crisis management, like this thing that we're dealing with today.
Yeah. Crisis management, crisis communication, you cannot do. See, hope falls into a category of overgeneralization. It's a great marketing piece, but it is not a strong piece to accumulate trust. You can't accumulate trust with hope. You can set the end. Isn't that interesting? It's like it only gets you so far.
It does.
It's I mean, even I'm getting flashbacks now of President Obama's poster that had the word hope on it. It'll get him elected, but once he's there, if he's not down here doing the bringing information, giving reassurance, empathy, scary honesty and timeliness, he's not doing that.
Hope would not have gotten us out of the 2008 financial crisis. He had to do hard work. His administration, pardon me.
It's okay.
His administration had to be the adult in the room.
That's right.
Make the hard choices, bring the scary honesty, the truth around what we needed to do as a nation to pull ourselves out of that ditch.
Right. And communicate evenly. Communicate all of his communications, people, all of his communications were measured. It was like, well, let me tell you, and all of a sudden it was just very, very measured.
Measured, and I think another word I'd like to add to that is intentional.
Intentional.
I think that measured is correct. I agree with you, Bill, but intentional in that there was no riffing in those press conferences. There was no winging it, going from the gutter instinct. This was calculated and very purposeful.
Yeah, it's regrettable that President Trump only has one speed. It's called, being on the political trail and promising things that he can't deliver. And
he's still trying to give the sizzle.
He's still trying to do the sizzle and stuff. And he'll come back around. He's coming back around to all of them. The wall, all the talking points. It's still swampy here. It's like, well, how are you defining the swamp now? The swamp has changed. Actually, it's more exposed now, actually, even worse.
And I think the swamp has gotten worse because the swamp of the past still had much more truth within it than it has today. Today, truth has become such a casualty of the new swamp.
Yeah, that's true.
You've still got a lot of the same senators, the same players. You got Mitch McConnell there. You got Lindsey Graham. You got, even on the Democrat side, you got Chuck Schumer, and you got, Dianne Feinstein. I mean, you've got a lot of the same players there. The issue now is, truth has changed things so much, and it's really what you were talking about earlier about the 5 things not to do. We still see, at some point we got into a conversation there about how things happen one-sided. You mentioned the messaging gets very much to one side with these politicians, amplifying their message, trying to drown out the opposing messages. And that has really brought us down further into the swamp and as a more divided nation. So to me, nothing has been done to drain the swamp. It's really just amplified it. And
so it's exasperating. Our need for truth isn't met. It's exhausting because the need for progress isn't met. Now we're going to face a down economy. So what I'd like to do is, Tom, for our next time is to really kind of roll up our sleeves a little bit and really look at how to apply empathy for these negative messages that keep coming in our direction, so we have a little bit of compassion when Trump does open his mouth and does say something that doesn't meet our need for truth. We don't have to use anger. We can use something different. We can use compassion and empathy for, well, it looks like the president is trying to provide, people some hope where we really actually need some accuracy at this moment. See, notice I'm saying what he's doing. he's looking to make an impression of leadership instead of actually providing us the accuracy that we need. So, and a lot of the politicians that get on TV are really missing this. They get stuck in explanation too. So let's see if we can provide some contribution to them and to our listeners, so that we can, get a better, sense of, what to do and, how to work our way out of this.
Sounds good, Bill. I look forward to that.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for this.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.